Welcome to the 2021 East Devon AONB annual meeting. My name is Alistair Handyside and I'm the chair of the East Devon AONB. First of all, I'd like to say we're very sad that we're not welcoming you all in person due to the continuing elements of the pandemic. We are having this as a virtual meeting, but next year we have everything crossed that this will be a meeting where we can see you all again and share all the good stuff that goes on in our beautiful area. I'm going to start by thanking the team, the small but perfectly formed team that forms our AONB. The work that they have done during the pandemic and the way that they've adapted and the way they've modified working practices has been outstanding, and we really are privileged to have them. So if I could have a little round of virtual applause for them, I would like you all to thank them very much as well. Thank you, team. Well done, all of you. Also, how could we do it without the partners? The partnership that helps form, drive, steer the East Devon AONB is absolutely pivotal to what we all do. It gives us the reach right out into all aspects of the wider community, the wider business community, the wider farming community across this beautiful area. And once again, thank you for all being so flexible with your working practices and working with us during the pandemic. Moving on to matters of national stature, we have all been looking eagerly to see what comes from the Glover Review. I think it's fair to say that we as AONBs are probably more hopeful of what this will bring than perhaps other partners, but we're talking today about our AONB. And the first sign of that kind of activity comes in the Farming in Protected Landscapes funds that we are receiving. To work with farmers in East Devon. Now this is a brilliant fund. It's going to be £200,000 in the first year, and what it'll enable us to do is carry on the good work that the team have been doing with farmers in East Devon. Now what we must remember here is that we do live in a managed landscape. It doesn't look like it did 5,000 years ago. This beautiful landscape that people want to protect is largely down to those farmers. So we've got funds now to go and work with them and actually help make sure that we are able to steer farming in protected landscapes in a way that works for all parties, that the farmers themselves, us that look at it and drive past it, for the ecology and for everybody else as well. So this is the first step in a many-year program, we hope. So I know the team will deliver on this. It's going to be absolutely fabulous. So well done. Lastly, we have also secured another £20,000 for what used to be called the Sustainable Development Fund, but is now called the Communities Project Fund. So that's very welcome. We've been doing this for years as an AONB, and it's had some unbelievably positive impacts across the communities within our AONB. And we look forward to seeing what innovations you guys come up with during this year. So please, if you've got anything, please let us know, please apply to the team and the panel will respond quickly to your applications. It's a really simple process. So, if you've got a great scheme, the support is there for you. So on that positive note, I'm going to say thank you all for attending today and hand back to Chris. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Alistair, and I hope you can see this screen now of mine, which is welcoming you to today's meeting. Just a quick run through the schedule. At Alistair's introduction, I'll do a quick review of our annual review this year and look a little bit ahead at the end of my presentation. We'll then be joined by Simon Roper, who's the Director of Ambios Limited, based in South Devon. And Simon's going to be talking to us a bit about Rewilding Devon, which is happening down on the Sharpened estate, and there's also a network developing, which I look very much looking forward to Simon introducing us to. We'll then possibly take a small break and then be followed by Howard Davis, who's our Chief Executive of the National Association for AONBs. We're very lucky to have Howard. We're just squeezing him in before he finishes his term at the association and moves on. And Howard's going to be talking to us at what feels like quite a pivotal time for AONBs about collaboration in protected landscapes management. We'll then have an opportunity for a Q&A panel. So if you do have any questions as we're going through, please type them into the chat box, and there'll be an opportunity to fire those questions at Simon at Howard and myself, and also we'll be joined by my colleague Pete Youngman. And then hopefully we wrapped up around 4 o'clock. So moving through, every year we produce an annual review on the work of the partnership, which is made up of the partners you see on the slide here. It's a chance for us to feedback on our work. And as I say, we'd normally hold it on an evening out in the AONB, and also celebrate some of the good practice that takes place across the AONB with our annual Ackland Award, which sadly we haven't been able to do for the last couple of years. But we have managed to do some work this year, despite COVID. It has been a very, very difficult time for us, for everybody. We've had to significantly adjust the way in which we work. I think it is all a bit like a sledgehammer initially. The nature of our work is out on the ground for much of the time. So we've had to adjust our operations, our systems, and our delivery, but we've managed to conduct a number of projects, and I'll just run you through some of the things that we've either played a part in or supported across the last year. So there's 2 or 3 projects around trees, which we've supported this year. And obviously trees are seen as a key tool in climate change. There's a big push for tree planting. So I work with the Devon Local Nature Partnership around some guidance for right place, right tree, which for those of you who know terminology, is just flick that around a bit, is helping to guide that process. The government's got a 25-year environment plan that has a target to increase our woodland cover in the UK to 12%. The Committee for Climate Change, which advises the government, suggests we need either 17 or 19 across the UK by 2050 if we're going to meet net zero ambitions. So that's quite a significant hike. Now, in the southwest, we do have some patches of good woodland cover, and in East Devon, we're near 18% cover already. So it's a tight squeeze in our patch, but there are and will be opportunities. And the guidance document is an effort to guide and ensure that the special qualities of Devon are not completely erased by the drive to plant as many trees as possible in our landscapes. It's a document that will be available online and also supported on the Devon County Council Environment Viewer, so that you can find your way through a mapping system that will advise you on suitable locations. We've also been supporting an ancient woodland inventory that's been coordinated through the Wildlife Trust and developed through Natural England. Why? Well, ancient woodland's pretty important stuff, really. It's been around since 1600. The ancient woodland inventory we have at the moment is over 40 years old. It's got some omissions, it's got some inaccuracies, and this 3-year project will help us to refine and update that, and hopefully reveal a greater depth and range of ancient woodland across Devon. We know they're important, they're very important for nature. On current estimates, only about 2.6% of England is made up of ancient woodland. But as a group, they're our most important woodlands for their wildlife and for their cultural heritage. They create a link for us to the past, and they're a touchstone to a changing landscape. And once you've lost them, it's very hard, if not impossible, to be recreated. So sticking with trees, we're a supporting partner in the Saving Devon Treescapes project, which is a Devon-wide National Lottery Heritage Fund partnership project, which is in its development phase at the moment, and is seeking to address the challenge of ash dieback, which is a fungal disease affecting ash in our landscape and their wildlife and their impact on the landscape. It's led by the Trust, and its aims, as I say, is to raise awareness of ash dieback as an issue, to help address the challenge of losing these trees in the landscape through supporting such activities as local tree nurseries, planting trees, and running community events. So we've had a couple that have managed to be delivered across what's been a challenging year in East Devon. One in the Sid Valley with Sidmouth Arboretum playing a part in helping promote tree planting, small pockets rather than large scale, and a project with Shute Primary School to provide a micro nursery kit to get kids supporting tree growth. The other work we've done has been with Devon County Council, doing some assessment of the LiDAR survey around the AONB in 2 areas, one to the west and one to the central. LiDAR is a short for light detection and ranging, which is a remote sensing method that enables you to use a pulsed laser to measure ranges, and it gives us basically a way of viewing the Earth's surface and beneath through vegetation cover. And it's very revealing and a powerful tool, and it's enabling us to identify opportunities to improve management of historic environment assets within the AONB, but also to provide opportunities for future community engagement and land-based projects. At the national conference we did manage to hold in 2019 in Colchester, there was a declaration made by the National Association on a commitment to nature from all AONBs, and it was timed to coincide with the government's work around the environment paper and the landscape review of national parks and AONBs. And as part of this commitment, we've been progressing our work around species recovery, nature recovery, and connecting people to nature. So we produced a State of Nature report this year, which needs a little bit more work, and that will form a basis of our nature recovery plan. We've confirmed our priority species for action through consultation with local stakeholders, and they're there on the right of your screen. Say a little bit more about one of those in a minute. And we've managed to secure some Arts Council funding for developing our approach to helping connect people to nature, particularly through the medium of art. So one of the species we have been successful in gaining some support for is this little creature here, grey long-eared bat. We got some Green Recovery Challenge Fund for this on a joint project with Bat Conservation Trust to extend the work from the Back to the Brink programme for the grey long-eared bat, which is one of our elusive 8. With only 8 known maternity roosts in the UK, 2 in East Devon within the Axe Valley, they form a vital link between other colonies to the south coast of England and the 2 colonies in the south of Devon. You can see the actions that are being supported through that funding, which runs through to next year, and the project's underway in helping to deliver key actions, and I think is ahead of its targets as we speak. We've operated a number of farm-based initiatives this year, but as I said before, not without challenges. It's been very difficult to get out on the ground and deliver stuff, but we've managed to maintain our farm group, the E7 Farmers Group, through our farm facilitation programme, which is based in the heart of the AONB and comprises of 69 farms. We've been delivering the programme with FWAG Southwest and the Devon Greater Horseshoe Bat Project to encourage take-up of countryside stewardship. And despite the restrictions, we've maintained a number of online events, although it's not been the most popular thing amongst farmers, as you can imagine. We've also supported endorsement of 8 mid-tier stewardship applications, and we've managed to secure additional funding for a further year of the programme. There's been a couple of areas of environmental land management work that we've been involved in this year. This is the changing programme for farming. As we come out of the EU, the new schemes to support environmental management on farms. So we were part of a national programme Howard was closely involved with, called Farming for the Nation, where we joined 12 other AONBs to look at identifying some of the issues and opportunities that the new programme might face through a test and trial programme. In our patch, we focused on the Unborn Valley, where we'd done some previous work, and based on the scale, we've been working with farmers that have struggled to qualify under previous schemes because they have small pockets of high value, high nature value habitats within their holdings, but not sufficient to qualify under the existing schemes. And our programme was trying to look at ways of developing enhancements and collaboration and connectivity in those areas as part of a wider recovery process. And then also we've been involved with some elms advocacy work, which we did jointly with the national parks, all AONBs, and focused locally within each AONB to carry out some awareness raising seminars and farmer surveys to see how the sector was gearing up for change and how we might best deliver new schemes and advice. Our seminars were delivered jointly with the Blackdown Hills AONB and Dorset AONB, covering a wide range of subjects. There's increasing activity around exploring ways to manage water in our landscapes naturally, and if we gear up to the wet season, flooding, flash flooding, particularly in Devon, is a major issue, but also runoff from land. And there have been a couple of projects we've been particularly helping and involved with this year. The first one with Devon Wildlife Trust and the Environment Agency and Devon County Council Flood Risk has been looking at slowing the flow of water that's coming off East Hill strips and running towards Otter, which many of you will know is quite a town prone to flooding in the past. The project's been looking at soil management improvements on the grassland areas, soil permeability, tree planting, hedgerow reinstatements, and general water storage retention measures. And you can see some of the pictures there, controlling some of the access routes and creating new habitats and trying to slow the flow through some of the channels. And despite the restrictions last year, they managed to achieve 90 interventions on site with 12 different landowners. They're very hopeful they'll be able to continue that work. For ourselves, we've been working specifically in 2 river catchments across the Blackdown Hills in East Devon, trying to target NFM measures in areas that will protect the communities at risk in towns lower down in the valley. The flood risk team at Devon has supported our work in this and has enabled us to go back and look at some earlier installations that were reported on previously, see how they're working. Some of them have been, some of them haven't, but it was very interesting going back to one of these sites to note that the landowner had actually started to implement a number of NFM measures themselves on their land, recognising the value that it's actually bringing to them and their property. So whilst we're not a statutory planning body yet, depending on what Glover's recommendations bring forward, we do engage in planning matters and comment on certain planning applications. It's difficult within the resources we have within the team, but we try our best to do so. And probably the most significant application this year was the Lower Otter Restoration Project, which is a significant habitat mitigation scheme in the River Otter, the lower sections with 55 hectares of mudflats, salt marsh and other habitats, which aims obviously to prevent future flooding and reduce the impact of climate change. The project's underway this year, and for those of you that live nearby, you'll have seen some of the changes that are starting to happen there. We do support the development of policy. We've been working with Natural England, the county and the district on a consultation policy for bats. We've got a significant bat population in our AONB based around Beer Quarry Caves, and we're looking to provide support through policy direction to ensure that they are protected. And we're hoping that will near completion this year. And finally, unashamedly, we've been plagiarising South Devon AONB's document on planning guidance to provide some additional support and information to people considering development proposals in the AONB that may affect the special qualities of the landscape. Finally, in terms of action and activity this year, despite it being a very difficult year, we were successful with supporting projects through our Sustainable Development Fund, which has now been renamed to Communities Project Fund. It's around £20,000 each year. It's able to fund up to £4,000 to support projects that help us to deliver the AONB partnership plan, and they've ranged from interpretation to promotional leaflets, biodiversity projects. It gives a gearing of about £3 for every £1 invested. And you can see here one that Sidmouth Arboretum have delivered with our support for planting one of our special species, then whitebeams, in some of the sites across the valley. The Community Project Fund for this year has got about £9,000 left, so there's still opportunities, and the revised guidance and details with that will enable wider range of groups, more diverse groups, to score positively, but also will consider the public benefits more widely across all applications. So looking forward, briefly, we finally got a statement from the government, or at least one of the ministers, about the Glover review. They were clear about some of the designation opportunities they were going to be considering. You can see them listed here. And we're awaiting a fuller fuller response from this. But we're very hopeful it will deliver on some of the other proposals outlined in the Glover Review, particularly about National Park AONB structures and how that might work. We've heard about a potential National Landscape Service, which we may hear a little bit about later, which might provide opportunities for strengthening, but also providing improved coordination across the wider family. We've heard about talk for diversifying the funding opportunities and sources for protected landscapes. We've also heard, and we're quite hopeful about, opportunities to strengthen the status and support given to AONBs that was identified in the Glover Review. And we're very hopeful that the process of consultation and the key proposals will come to fruition later in this year. We can look on some positive outcomes for AONBs. One of the things that came through the Glover Review was a key proposal for a central place for national landscapes in the new environmental land management scheme. We've already touched on aspects of that in my earlier slides, but one of the key things that's come up this year has been a programme under the Agricultural Transition Programme for farming and protected landscapes. It's a 3-year initiative through DEFRA that AONBs and national parks are delivering as part of the transition programme for farming, that will support 4 key themes around nature recovery, around climate change, around opportunities for people to engage, enjoy, discover and understand the landscape and its heritage, and to support nature-friendly, sustainable farming. And importantly, for initiatives that support and deliver the National Park and AONB plans. The funding, as I say, is for 3 years, been delivered largely in-house by AONBs and national parks, and that's required us to make some staffing changes. In Devon, there is a variety of scale of grant available across the AONBs, and I'll show you a table about that in a minute. The funding is approved through local assessment panels, which are set up in-house within the protected landscapes and work around an 8-week cycle. So most AONBs and national parks are coming up to their first panel decision now. And there's an application window which ends in January of each year. And obviously we're hopeful for the further 2nd and 3rd years funding to come along. It's a massive step for protected landscapes, particularly AONBs, I think, where many have not had a direct relationship in such a way between DEFRA and the farmers in the way that we're having now. So in Devon, just a flavour of what's happening across the AONBs. Thought it would be useful for you to see this. 5 AONBs, some of them in and out of the county, the Blackdown Hills and the Tamar Valley, spanning into Somerset and Cornwall other counties. The funding available to those is ranged from 115 to 342,000 for this year. It's been delivered by a mix of in-house staff and new staff. For us, Pete Youngman, who's on the call today, is taking on a role of overseeing the programme, and his work is being backfilled by a wildlife officer, Lindy Rich, who joined us this week. And we've also got an admin officer helping us to administrate that programme. That's Lou Maddox, who's also joined us this week. So they're here to listen to this to find out exactly what it is we do, which is good timing. So in summary, we're really looking forward to delivering this programme. It provides an opportunity to further nature conservation and landscape enhancement in the AONB, but we're also looking to the government's commitment to respond to the Glover Review and to some of the recommendations which we really hope will strengthen our role in shaping how our AONB landscapes develop and evolve. And I'll finish by saying this is how I hope to see you all next year, really. One of our evening sessions and a chance to network and get to see people in the flesh. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and what I want to do is give you a flavour of something that we held for earlier this year. The National Conference for AONBs was hosted in Devon. Normally that would involve all the AONBs piling down into Devon, staying in university, well, in this case it was due to be Exeter, and going out and exploring the landscape and learning about the things that are going on in and around Devon. We weren't able to do that, but the next best thing we could do was give them a virtual field trip. We've got an edited version of this for you for a few minutes before we go on to Simon, which I thought would give you a nice flavour, not only of our landscape, but also what that field trip was all about.
Welcome to the East Devon area of outstanding natural beauty. Today we will take you to the beautiful coastal village of Beaver, then head inland to Blackberry Camp, and finally to the Otter Valley. Along the way we will be joined by our partners with whom we've worked on projects across this landscape. We very much hope that you enjoy your field trip with us today. Thank you.
So we're down at the beach at Beaver with its distinctive white cliffs. It's a working beach with fishermen hauling their boats and the usual array of sunseekers. We're outside the Beaver Heritage Centre to meet Nora Jaggers, a very active community volunteer, and Kate Bunting from Colchester Devon Estates, their countryside learning officer, to discuss the bat-friendly Beaver initiative, which is focused on the bats that hibernate at Beaver Quarry and Caves, a special area of conservation. We're out on Beaver Head now, with magnificent coastal views, and speaking to Rick, who farms this part of the AONB. It's a very important site with the southwest coast path hugging the cliff, with over 160,000 people using it each year. It has a late Iron Age field system and farmstead, an undercliff area which is a special area of conservation, which also forms part of the World Heritage Coast. We've dropped down now, we're in the valley below Blackberry Camp, and we've come to a little farm. We're going to meet John Phillips, the landowner. We're down here because 3 of our Colchester Declaration species are bats. That's greater horseshoe bats, grey long-eared bats and Bechstein bats, and we've been doing lots down here, and it's a good place to see just how good a habitat or the habitat needs for those 3 species.
So from Blackberry Camp, we're going to take you along the plateau tops to the top of the Roncombe Valley and look at the spectacular views down the valley towards the coast, and then on to Sidmouth, further west to join the River Otter at Budleigh Salterton. So we're here at Budleigh Salterton, and we're talking to Sam Bridgewater, the Head of Wildlife and Conservation at Colchester Devon Estates, about the Lower Otter Restoration Project. So Sam, hi, we're here on the River Otter at Budleigh Salterton. Can you tell me a bit about what's going on here? Is it right to think we're going back in time?
Yes, we hope so. So, I mean, this is a lovely valley, and a project that we're hoping to progress is the Lower Otter Restoration Project, which is about trying to adapt the valley to climate change.
So we stay on the river now and head upstream to Yettington and Otterton to join Jake Chant, Field Officer for Devon Wildlife Trust, and the River Otter Beaver Trial, and local farmer Peter Wassenage. So Jake, we're here at Yettington, just off the River Otter, a little bit away from the main river. Can you just tell us a little bit about the River Otter Beaver Trial and what it's all about?
Yeah, sure. So beavers have been living on the River Otter since around 2007, 2008.
Hopefully you enjoyed that. There are further clips of the range of aspects of the field trip that we undertook on our website. If you want to see that, you'll get a link to it in your follow-up message from this event. Okay, thank you very much. I would now like you to hand over to Simon Roper, who will talk to us all about rewilding Devon. Over to you, Simon.
Well, thank you, Chris. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Talking to you actually from not in South Devon, but actually in the middle of Devon. I'm actually based just outside Crediton, but our main operation is based in the south of Devon. So absolutely wonderful. First thing to say really is thank you so much for inviting me along today, and it's a real privilege to be here. And we love working with the AONBs, and I've been, as you can tell from the grey hair, around in this sector for a number of years, and it's always lovely working with AONBs across the country. It's a fantastic network. So I wanted to chat you through field trips. Actually, I'm glad the theme is field trips, because I wanted to take you on another virtual field trip if you're willing to come with me today. A few videos of what we get up to and the sorts of things that have been happening for us, leading to ecological restoration and rewilding. But first of all, I'd just like to share with you a few slides just to begin that kind of process. So here we are. Hopefully you can see that. So my name is Simon Roper, and as Chris said, I'm a director of Ambios Limited. It's a not-for-profit company that is actually 20 years old now, involved in nature conservation training. And we do that two ways. We do it at residential programs at our farm in South Devon, and also through distance learning, online learning. And we've got involved in this thing called rewilding, or what we might call nature recovery, or we might call ecological restoration, or even perhaps in some cases sustainable farming, all sorts of different terms referring to making space for nature. And I wanted to take you on a particular example, which is the one that we're involved with in South Devon on the Sharpened estate today. A few videos to show you later. I wanted to set the context, and you'll hear me talking about the stakeholders involved, and the location, and various examples of projects. I wanted to show you a little bit about the vision that we have for our site in South Devon, the wildlife monitoring and the interventions, and to talk a little bit about the particular business model that's working for us as a nature conservation training organisation, and the role of adults with learning difficulties with whom we share our tenancy, and their role in ecological restoration. And sort of leading through, is this a model for the future? Could this work for you? Could you take elements from it that might be of interest? And then leading on just at the end to talk a little bit about the Devon Rewilding Network, which emerged partly by accident, really, over the last 6 months, and just introduce you to the Devon Rewilding Network to see if that might be of interest as well. So as we go through, you'll hear various different things. I just wanted to introduce them to you before we go into the videos. You'll hear us talk about Lower Sharpened Farm, which is where Ambios is based. It's 80 acres of ground, and we've been there for about 8 years on a tenancy from the Sharpened Trust, which is an educational charity. Some of you may have come across it, based on the Sharpened estate in South Devon. So you'll hear us talk about Lower Sharpened Farm, and then you'll hear us talk about Home Farm, which is the 50 acres that we took on relatively recently, about 18 months ago, and started to rewild. I use that word broadly. You'll hear me talk about the Sharpened Wild for People project, which is a lottery funded project that really has allowed us to integrate people into the landscape changes that we're seeing down on the farm. I should just say that some of the videos I'm about to show you were recorded for an international audience. So please bear with me with some of the references. When we talk about being in the UK, you'll understand it was originally recorded for an international audience. And I'd like to show you a couple of clips of video talking specifically about soil bunting restoration, which has been happening as part of our work on the farm. Just a quick orientation. I'm sure you're all familiar with the county. Here we are, look, down on the River Dart, just south of Totnes. That's the location we're going to be heading to in a moment. And on the Sharpened estate, these are the two holdings that we'll be discussing. So we have Lower Sharpened Farm, which is our tenancy that we've had for about 8 years. And as I said, about 18 months ago, we added Home Farm to that, which has come out of intensive milk production for Sharpened cheese. And some of you may have come across Sharpened wine, which is another output from the estate. Not us, we're just tenants, but we've taken what was the milk production facility, and we're looking at the landscape restoration around that. So that's where we're kind of heading. Let me just stop that screen share for a moment and take you, if I may, to the first video, which talks about the context and the stakeholders. We're here on the Sharpened estate in South Devon, in the southwest of England. And this is an ecological restoration or rewilding project that has many different stakeholders. So I'm talking to you now as Ambios Limited, a not-for-profit company that's involved in nature conservation training. And we are tenants on the Sharpened estate, which is a charity that supports connection with nature. So they are our landlords. Within that context, we're in a historic landscape, and a landscape that is has a recognition for a history going back to the 1700s as a particular sort of landscape, and also, of course, has an ecological value. So there are two organisations, Historic England and Natural England, that both have interests in this area of land. And then on top of that, we are in a protected landscape, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty, known in the UK as an AONB. So again, another organisation that's a stakeholder in what we're doing here. Our trainees are also stakeholders, because they come here on a residential programme and they help us with the wildlife monitoring. So this is a very mixed stakeholder environment that also involves the local community. We are literally about 20 minutes walk away from a major town, the town of Totnes, and there are people that come here walking. So again, more stakeholders involved. And part of what we're doing as this ecological restoration programme, or rewilding, is to involve those stakeholders in this project, which is making space for nature. So the importance of taking over, we've just taken over this area of land, to move it into organic production, and also to reduce the grazing pressure and the ground, and promote the biodiversity, increase the biodiversity, because at the core of what we do, nature conservation training, we need to show our trainees that very biodiversity. Without it, we can't function as an organisation in different capacities. So hopefully you've got some context to what we do there, which is based around nature conservation training. I should say we've been involved with how we say training the next generation of wildlife professionals, some of whom you'll hear from a little bit later on, as I say, for about 20 years now. So this is the sort of bread and butter of what we do. So the next thing I'd like to show you is a little bit about the project Wild for People. This is the next video that I'd like to show you.
Welcome to the Sharpened estate in South Devon. This is the first anniversary of Wild for People. Year one has been absolutely amazing. We've seen recolonisation from the adjacent land of crickets and bird species appearing in greater numbers. And the next phase as we move on will be to create an environment in which even more species can return. Part of what we're doing to the land is actually just leaving it alone, not grazing it, not interfering in any way, not putting any chemicals on it, just letting it settle. And as a consequence, what we're seeing is a greater abundance of seed-producing flowers and plants, and also a greater abundance of insects. Because of that, we're seeing more birds that feed on those things, and because of that we are seeing more birds that actually feed on the birds that are feeding on those things, and that's been really exciting to observe. Rewilding is about making space for nature and wildlife. Imagine the view behind me as a silken tapestry made up of threads, cross threads. Each one of those threads represents an individual species. What's been happening over many, many years is that we have been losing species, losing threads one by one. At first it doesn't affect the tapestry, but eventually it will. Eventually the tapestry will collapse. We're at the point now where we can do something about this. We can actually re-thread some of those threads. We can bring back those species. That's what rewilding is about. That's what Wild for People is doing. That's what we're doing here on the Sharpened estate. As we go into this year, 2021 and beyond, visitors to the Sharpened estate will see an impact. There's going to be new fencing introduced so that we can allow eventually stock to roam across the estate. There will be level crossings introduced along some of the public pathways. The level crossings will be set in favour of the grazing animals so that they have free rein right the way across the land that we're looking after. This is really important, and we're going to be asking people to, as they come to those gates, to go through, open, close them behind you as you go through, because it's really important that the animals are allowed to roam as they wish.
Sharpened Wild for People project is about engagement with the local community and a wider audience. Part of that is about engaging citizen scientists. So everybody can play a role in helping us record the wildlife across the estate. And that's what's going to be rolling out in the next year and beyond. The fantastic thing about this year has been witnessing that increase in species abundance across the site. We're very excited about that, but we're on a journey. And this is part of a rewilding program which feeds into a national picture. So increasingly now, rewilding is becoming a phrase that's being used and a technique that's being used to make space for nature across the UK. And we on the Sharpened estate here are part of that. Okay, so I hope that kind of gave you a bit of a dive into the Wild for People project, some of the funding that we've been able to access in order to progress this restoration. What I'd like to share with you now is a visual representation of the vision. We put together a vision of what might happen to the land. And I'll just share this very briefly with you. So this is what the landscape looks like when we took it on, and we're trying to imagine 10 years or more down the line. And so we did a visual impression and working with one of our team to create this difference, the scene that you see before you changing. With the introduction of grazers and browsers and potentially disruptors, but very much on a lower scale, allowing nature to bounce back, you'll see it's visually it's a slightly more disrupted, slightly scruffier vision, where edges don't become edges, they become blurred. I'm sure you're familiar with the kind of thing. We just wanted to give people a visual impression, what it is now versus what it might be in the future. And this was our first attempt at that, looking as you are now across the registered parkland landscape. So this was potentially our vision for what it might look like, although we're not going to be held to anything because it's experimental. We're going forward now to see what's going to happen, and that's part of the excitement of it, is to discover what happens next. Moving from there, I wanted then to show you what it might look like in terms of a business model. So what does this actually look like? And I just wanted to share this particular video with you, looking at our Ambios business model.
We wanted to share our rewilding journey over the past year here on the Sharpened estate in South Devon. Our rewilding is set on 50 acres of historic listed parkland within the South Devon area of outstanding natural beauty. It's a highly visible, sensitive and accessible landscape where nature and culture are married together. Farmland that has been in intensive agriculture with improved and semi-improved pasture prevail, where the heritage and the ecology of the land has been in a degraded state. So on the 1st of April 2020, we started rewilding at Sharpened. Our approach has been to marry up the heritage and the ecological values and engaging the different and multiple stakeholders. We're running a diversified rural business. For Ambios, that means nature conservation training, but it also means that we need to access income from the land, and for us, that's countryside stewardship. But this is a model that others can also follow, and it's important for us to be trialing these and showing these examples where others can follow. The partners in our program are United Response, who offer adults with learning difficulties, well-being opportunities, and Sharpened Trust as our landlord. And so with this partnership, we've been able to access National Lottery Heritage Fund grant support through the Sharpened Wild for People project. So what does rewilding actually look like for us? Well, firstly, we're going to remove all the internal fences so stock and wildlife can freely roam across the whole holding. This connects the pasture and make a perimeter fence to ensure that it's stock proof. This also means that the general public can be safe in and around the livestock and can be part of the rewilding experience. Our organic livestock will be made up of grazers and browsers and disturbers. We'll be restoring the historic viewpoints and a collapsed bridge on the estate, as well as replanting 141 trees in their original locations. So year 2 will see the bridge restored and the viewpoints opened. We'll be looking to introduce small numbers of mixed livestock and ensure their welfare is high through a programme of monitoring and checking by United Response Team. We'll be working with lots and lots of different people. Our trainees will be surveying and monitoring the land. Weekly volunteering days will start up as well, where we'll be planting trees and building tree guards, as well as improving access and interpretation. So please join us on our rewilding journey. Follow us online or on social media where you can find out about the opportunities to engage.
Okay, so there again, just moving through our particular business model, which is about the nature conservation training, and just giving you a little bit of an oversight about how that might work. Excuse me. So I then wanted to move on, if I can get this right, and just talk a little bit. Let's just share this one. Here we go. So this is the first year of restoration.
This is home farm in winter 2019, before we began our rewilding journey. We can see a celebrated landscape, but with conventional farming dominating the scene, the land is ecologically restricted. The grassland is flat and homogeneous, and there are limited places for wildlife to be. So, let's zoom ahead through 1 year of rewilding. As you can see, there's been quite a change. In the absence of grazing, which is our strategy in the initial phases of rewilding, the composition is starting to alter. There is more three-dimensional structure to the vegetation and rougher field margins. Some species, such as tussock-forming grasses and voles, are really starting to flourish. In all, there is more space for wildlife. Through the summer months, grasses and herbs have grown up and flowered and given a wonderful feeling of release and renewal. The fields have been buzzing with insect life, jumping with grasshoppers and crickets. We've seen more specialist farmland birds making use of seeds, insects and new perches on tall vegetation, most notably stonechat, linnet and goldfinch. We now regularly see barn owls and kestrels feeding on voles in the open fields, where we have never seen them before. The land already feels wilder, more alive and richer in wildlife. In all, it's been an inspiring, rewarding and reassuring first year.
So then just setting that video, then just setting the kind of context of what we've observed over the first year. And I think there's a point here that relates to our trainees on the farm, the young people that come particularly just post-university. They've got the knowledge and understanding. They're looking for the skills in order to get jobs in nature conservation. And actually, there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about ecological crisis, climate crisis, which can be a shade depressing. And I think one of the great things about this kind of nature restoration is that it gives people hope, and it shows that things can happen in a relatively small time frame. And I think that's a very useful thing for young people to engage with because of that hope. So almost at the end, I just wanted to share with you a little bit of excitement that came through, recorded by some trainees on a first sighting of a particular species that we were aiming to encourage back to the farm. And I had a very excited phone call one day, and this video kind of tells that little story.
Hi, so we're up here in the birdseed field, which has been specifically planted by Lower Sharpened Farm to help overwintering birds. And we've just seen some Searle buntings for the first time in over 10 years of waiting, and so it's really exciting.
So yeah, we just had a really good spot today, done a bit of bird watching in this lovely seed field, and significant sighting was a Searle bunting. So the Searle bunting has been a bird that's been like heavily hammered by like mechanisation of farming over recent decades. I think it was 1991, there was only 86 pairs in the UK. And the RSPB has done a fantastic job. It's well over 1,000 now, but it's still a really significant sighting because they don't move very far. They need a lot of varied habitat, so they need places to feed on grasshoppers in the summer, lots of long grass, and in the winter they need lots of seed bed because they rely on seed. But they don't travel very far, so you need those two things close together. And as I'm sure you can imagine with modern farming and stuff, that's not a very common habitat to have. So if you have soil buntings on your land, it means it's a really good habitat, lots of variance going on. And we've managed to see 3 this morning, which is massive. So it means that this place, Ambios, is doing a great job of extending their range and helping it even further. And it means that they're going to get taken seriously by like big organisations like Natural England. So hopefully they get more funding in the future. Whoop, whoop.
By adhering to the highest stewardship scheme run by Natural England, we've managed to expand the range of the sill bunting into our higher fields at Lower Sharpened Farm. For more information about the sill bunting and the management tactics that we used, check out our blog on the Ambios website.
Okay, so there you go. So that was our trainees, 2 of our trainees there talking earlier in the year very excitedly about discovering soil buntings on site for the very first time. I just wanted then just to come to a little bit about how we involve adults with learning difficulties on our farm. I mentioned it at the beginning, and there's a short video recorded by my colleague Jack here that just talks a little bit about that and their involvement on the farm.
Welcome to our farm here in South Devon, where we are rewilding 50 acres of our holding in partnership with a wonderful charity called United Response. We're Ambios Limited and we're interested in nature conservation training, and we partner with United Response on the farm, who support adults with learning difficulties. Around 100 service user days a week are run from the farm, non-residentially, so the guys come in every day. Around 20 or 25 per day, and they engage in a series of activities. And now that we've fully embraced rewilding here, we're able to sort of introduce and frame a lot of the activities that we run with the United Response guys around rewilding and ecological restoration. We have a conservation group who carry out simple wildlife surveys that help gather data. So it might be that they do an earthworm survey where we're digging earthworms, or a butterfly survey. We also check our wildlife boxes, and we have a number of bird boxes under a national scheme where we check the nesting viability of birds in the boxes.
Been doing 57 bird boxes.
57 bird boxes. We did this morning.
This morning.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And recently we made a number of kestrel boxes. We saw decent numbers of kestrels hunting over the rewilding area. What we really wanted to do is put up some boxes so that they've got some areas where they can nest. And the other example, I suppose, that we're able to engage the service users from United Response with is around camera trapping and catching wildlife images. So being able to set cameras on paths that we know wildlife are using, corridors that wildlife are using, is really great. And we're getting lots of different, sort of perspectives or lots of different ideas from the service users about where the cameras are best placed and what the best story is that we can then tell. But it's not just about the conservation as well. We can frame a lot of the activities of the farm and the holding and the experiences and the well-being that the service users need to take from their time at the farm with us around ecological restoration. So for instance, we have livestock that are grazing or browsing or rootling around on the holding, and they need regular checking, daily checks, sometimes twice a day. And so the service users who are coming here really love animals and really feel a responsibility for looking after our animals.
Right, and this afternoon we've come to see the pigs.
To see pigs, water.
They love hanging out over there.
Hanging out everywhere.
And yeah, it's been really great.
It'd be great.
So these ways in which we're working with United Response and they're working with us and helping us with our programme is really sort of interactive, really interdependent, and allows us to connect with a really wide audience. And one of the ambitions of us here working at this wonderful estate in Sharpened in South Devon.
Okay, so you can see that you now, I hope, got a feel for the various different elements of what we do. So the service users, the nature conservation training, and the elements of ecological restoration that's happening actually on the ground. So I think there's one last video that I wanted to show you.
Hello, my name's Jack Skuse and I'm a director of Ambios. You've seen from today's field trip how ecological restoration for us plays out on a small scale and involves multi-stakeholders. For us at Ambios, it also sits centrally to our business. And so for this piece of the field trip, I wanted to share with you how that works. Ecological restoration, as I say, is fundamental to our economy and our business model. It also connects us with people at many different levels, from trainees and volunteers to people within our care community and their families and staff, as well as other members of our community. And so ecological restoration links fundamentally with our business and with our communities. And in our business, at our scale, we feel that there is an opportunity for others to learn from that. And so it becomes a scalable model. And I wanted to touch on a little bit about how that business works and how we've shaped or framed ecological restoration within the center of our business. So ecological restoration in and of itself has its own economy attached to us here in the UK. Our grant subsidy scheme for environmental measures called Countryside Stewardship is something that we've embraced fully on our holding. And right across the 50 acres, our land is under a parkland restoration scheme, which we've been able to negotiate with some of our stakeholders, Natural England and Historic England, to be able to fund some of this restoration works. We also have economy around some of the sales of our livestock. Our main business is around nature conservation training, and that plays out in different ways. And so having a restored ecosystem on a parkland farm, which was ecologically degraded as well as historically and culturally degraded, means that we have a rich learning environment for trainees to come and study and survey and gain the skills, fundamental skills for a career in nature. One of our previous trainees called it a nature boot camp. And so a lot of the trainees will hopefully go on to working in our sector within NGOs, within government bodies and so on. We offer 12-week fully residential placements, and our 8-bed bunk house provides placements 4 times a year. This for us makes it sustainable and repeatable because we have occupancy year-round. We're also able to reach out to a wider community through our online courses. A lot of that is delivered from our farm here. And there are opportunities to connect with universities and offer residential field trips as well. So a lot of people engagement throughout the main centre of our business, and this translates to a partnership we have with United Response, and you've seen the nature of that in a previous part of today's field trip. A national charity, United Response, support adults with learning disabilities, where we provide a day service. So this is a part of our USP, part of our unique selling point for our trainees and the people who we engage with to connect with a different community, a different audience in which to interact and to engage with nature and the restoration of our land. And it also networks into our local community, so firmly embeds ecological restoration within our community. And so I think overall we framed and shaped our business around ecological restoration, where the economy and the engagement, where a lot of the livelihoods from the staff, from the service users, from our trainees, and from people living within our communities are able to benefit from ecological restoration. Where others on a small, medium scale can also model and shape and look to diversify their economies in order to embrace ecological restoration and the need for ecological restoration, and to see that as being a sustainable, viable enterprise for land management here in the UK. And so we see it as being a model, an example of a small, independent and also sustainable business, which is founded on ecological restoration, that we hope is a model for others. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that is the context of where we are working and how we are working in our particular stakeholder environment. And we launched this restoration of the 50 acres 18 months ago, and with a live event, because it was pre-COVID. Lots of people came to Sharpened House, and we were able to talk to people about it. And what emerged from that was a conversation about, was there a network out there across the county who might be interested in this? Were there others that were interested in hearing, interested in contributing, others that had really good ideas, interested in sharing? And we landed up as Ambios kind of in a position where I think that sort of there was an idea of who would volunteer, and you know, everybody stepped back, and we found ourselves the only people stepping forward. So we landed up just launching the network, and with some great support from Woodland Trust. And I'd just like to introduce it to you, if I may. If I just go back, if I can find it to my original slides, which have momentarily disappeared. Here we are. There we go. So I just wanted to introduce the Devon Rewilding Network to you very, very briefly. It was launched week beginning 14th of June with some wonderful support from the Woodland Trust and from Rewilding Britain. It runs on a platform, online platform called Mighty Networks, and it's really a notice board for events, stories and news at this time. Quite remarkably, it now has 220 members, which we're delighted about, and you may already be a member, and if you're not, then I'd welcome you to go and have a look for it online. We did a quick census of some of our members some time ago, and the interesting thing, and I think the really rich thing about this, is that not everybody owns land. We were really keen to have a network that reached out to lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds, particularly interested in those that are involved in education and research and well-being, as well as landowners. And you can just see on this slide just the about 25% indirectly involved in what we might call rewilding or ecological restoration, 56% small landowners, so less than 50 hectares. So that was really interesting. A few larger landowners as well, which is great. So a really diverse membership, and it's growing almost day by day, which again, very exciting. We are at the moment promoting news and events and positive stories from across the county, and we're planning to do how to do things, how to get started information sheets, and we're planning to do site visits when we get back to physical site visits, which are now upcoming. First one planned for November, in fact, and networking opportunities. In fact, tomorrow we're doing an online session about seagrass, which is this kind of green ecological restoration, blue ecological restoration, if you like. The marine environment is launching lunchtime tomorrow. We've had already a couple of people who've done what we call network takeovers, where they actually have the network for 3 days and they can post information about what they're doing, and that's proving very successful both for them and for the membership. We've had some really great feedback. We're working on information sheets, as I mentioned earlier, and site visits. So that, in essence, is the Devon Rewilding Network. It's part of a system, a collaboration of a number of different networks that are now emerging across various counties, and they're supported, of course, under the umbrella of Rewilding Britain. So this appears to be gathering momentum, and we're really interested in the fact that it's gathering momentum within the county of Devon. So that brings me to the end of my talk today. Thank you ever so much for listening. Again, thank you for inviting me, AONB team. It's been a great privilege. Going to stick around for questions, happy to do that. But I think that's enough for me for the moment. I'll hand back to Chris and just to say once again, thank you ever so much for your time, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Simon. Fantastic presentation, a lot of preparation there that's gone on, and you've obviously achieved an awful lot in a very short space of time. I'm sure there are lots of questions that people will have for you, and we've got a few in the chat at the moment, but I'll keep them coming. Many thanks for your presentation. I'm going to just pause on the break. I think we'll crack on if everybody's okay with that. If you can stick with us, we've got our Chief Exec, Howard, to give us a presentation, and I will now hand you across. Over to you, Howard.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, and thanks everyone. It's a real privilege actually to be invited back to this meeting. I think, as Chris will be aware, and some of you may be aware, I spoke at an AGM that you held in 2010, which was the first AGM that I'd ever spoken to at an AONB level. and this is the last one that I'm doing in this role. So there's a circularity which feels quite neat. So thanks very much for the invite. When I accepted the invite, it was a little while ago, and I envisaged driving from my home on the Wales-English border and coming to stay in a pub in Devon and presenting to you all, and then spending an evening drinking beer with Chris. And in the sunshine, in the autumn sun, as it is, I'm sitting in an office at home with grey sky and permanent rain. And to me, it exemplifies really how little we can see, how far we can't see ahead, how difficult it is to actually predict what's going to happen. And that touches on something that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But what I wanted to do, and I know there'll be lots of opportunity for discussion afterwards, is just to comment on some of the things that I've heard. First of all, as I've said to Chris in the past, being able to see these places online reminds me how desperately important these places are. And if you're tucked away in offices and homes, unable to get out into the green spaces, that was a real reminder as to how important they are, at least for me. So really valuable. The other thing is just to comment on the words. So Simon used lots of different words, and I know Ed, I think in the chat, has mentioned it already. But some of the words that I jotted down were vision, crisis, ambition, hope, transformation, disruption, rewilding, interdependent, restoration, recovery, and so on. And it dawned on me that every time we hear these words, we all have a slightly different take on what those words mean. And because of that, we all respond in a slightly different way. And if we're going to really make the best of what we've got to deal with, it's going to be really important to establish a real common understanding as to where we want to go and what these words really mean. So on a final point in relation to observation, there's a lot of recovery, rewilding, restoration. There's a lot of looking back. There's a lot of looking back into the history and trying to recreate. And I know that's not what's meant, but many of you will be aware that as a national association and AONB body, we did a lot of work with Simon Armitage, the poet laureate, and he wrote a poem for us called Fugitives, and some of you may well have read it. And it's quite strange working with a poet laureate. It makes you realize how inarticulate you are. And I had a number of phone calls with him to talk about landscape and the value of landscape. And he captured everything that I'd ever thought about landscape in one poem. And part of the thing that I remember most is in discussing with him the role that these places play, not just for society, but for the economy and for the whole functioning of the world, that he was very future focused. And he said in the middle of the conversation, what you're saying is nature is future. And that was a line that came out and stood out in the poem. So really interesting. Let's have a conversation at some stage around the use of language, because I think if we're going to engage people with our agenda and our vision, we've got to be forward thinking, not backward thinking. And I think inadvertently we can do that. So anyway, thank you, Chris, for the invite, and thanks, Simon, for the stimulation and everything that's gone before. It's probably about time that I gave the presentation that I prepared. So it is not multimedia. So I'm very impressed by the bravery of both Chris and Simon. I've got about 8 slides that I want to talk through, but we'll see where it goes. So I'll attempt now to share my screen. So what I'm going to talk briefly about is collaboration in protected landscapes, and I'm going to touch on what I think is an almost unique offer that designated landscapes have in order to address some of the challenges that we face. And when I say designated landscapes, I mean protected landscapes, national parks, areas of outstanding natural beauty. But I wanted to start with this slide. This is a report that's only just come out, a report called Nature Positive. And when you open the summary report, there's a very stark set of photos that hit you. And it's these 4 people, young people, who say something quite hard-hitting. We are the generation who's been handed the climate and ecological crisis. And we are the generation who will have to live with the decisions you make today You have 9 years to make the changes needed. You have to fix it. We have to live with it. And I think that's a really stark reminder of the job that's in hand for those of us working in the environmental sector. And I'll come back to the term sector in a little while. But this report came up with 4 headline messages, and I'd just like to run through those messages quite quickly. First headline message is that nature loss harms human health and well-being and undermines our economy. Ecosystems are being degraded, as we know, and biodiversity is being lost at an alarming rate around the world, and declines are continuing. These losses matter. We no longer have a sustainable natural system that can provide reliable supplies of clean water. We can't purify our air, we can't regulate our climate or secure our food supplies with the systems we now currently have, the natural systems. More than half of our global GDP is put at risk by losses to nature. Here in the UK, 40% of species are in decline, and more than 40 million birds have been lost from our skies over the past 50 years. A quarter of mammals are threatened with extinction, including some of the more common ones that we once thought were abundant, such as the hedgehog. The UK remains one of the most nature depleted nations on Earth. So that's a really hard-hitting first point. The second point is that recovering nature is everyone's business. World leaders, we all know, have promised change, but it will require transformative change across society in the way that we protect, value, use and engage with nature. All government ministries, all organisations, all businesses, all people will need to change. So what we're talking about here is systemic change. This isn't a fiddling around at the edges. This is fundamental change. The third headline is that we need to go high nature and low carbon, tackling the twin crises of biodiversity loss and climate change together. So the crises of biodiversity loss and climate change share many of the same causes and solutions. We need to tackle both crises, or we'll tackle neither. Restoring wildlife habitats on land and sea can lock up carbon and help us to adapt to climate change, such as by reducing flood risk, holding water high in the water cycle. Embracing natural solutions has never been more important because climate change is already impacting on us, and it's creating profound challenges for us, both at a global and a local level. So we're aware of this. Nature can help us survive this uncertain future, but its ability to do so depends upon biodiverse ecosystems that are resilient to the changes ahead. And the final point, the final headline, is it's not too late to become nature positive by 2030, provided we act now. So it's a positive message. Becoming nature positive means reversing the current declines in biodiversity so that ecosystems and species begin to recover. And this is a first step in the path to full nature recovery. And this is exactly the work that Simon was talking about earlier. The UK is committed to become nature positive by 2030, and this can be achieved. But we know that the next few years are absolutely critical. If species populations are to begin recovering by 2030, wildlife habitats need to be restored and created now. Nature recovery is actually within our grasp. We know what to do, we know how to do it, but the time to act is absolutely now. So what I'd like to do over the next 15, 20 minutes, I suppose, is talk about the two big issues, climate change and nature recovery, recognizing that the two are ultimately connected and intertwined themselves. And not only look at the importance of integration, but collaboration and the way we approach complex problems, how we identify shared causes and promote shared solutions. More specifically, how we actually deliver on the twin ambition of carbon negative and nature positive. But I want to start by reflecting on a few current issues, the largest one being the still very active pandemic. When I hear people speaking of this episode in history as being over and the aspirations to get back to normal seem to be the headlines, I'm quite puzzled. We've had a very, very clear insight into the extent of our entanglement the relationship between foreign relations and energy supplies, for instance, foreign lorry drivers and fuel, foreign lorry drivers and supermarket shelves, the fundamental importance of green space for people's health and well-being, the real difficulties we have in rolling out a coordinated approach to public health in an emergency, the genuine and deep importance of family, friends, and community. Everything and everyone is interconnected. We change something here, and it has an unexpected impact over there. And that's completely obvious. We're accepting the fact that there's an interconnectedness about everything and an interrelationship between everything we work with. So even with the most obvious and stark warning signs, we still insist on working in silos. We have separate government departments for the environment, health, communities and planning, and education. We support charities and businesses that focus on one specific issue, cause or product at the cost of all others. And we teach geography separate from history and biology. We put people in groups that have the same tasks and function, and then create a business model that places them in competition with each other. Competition for resources, profile, position, and power. We then structure these groups on the basis of hierarchy, such that organizational leaders struggle to even see across their own whole organization, let alone across multiple organizations. So we separate issues, separate organizations, and separate people. And then we expect them to engage positively in systems that are fundamentally and naturally interconnected. Indeed, we expect disconnected individuals and organizations to tackle complex interrelated problems, then wonder why we fail. And this, for me, is the most significant systemic problem that we need to resolve. So, landscape has always been about entanglement. I'm sure all of you in the room will get that. It's not a surprise. The European Landscape Convention, a convention that still very much applies to the UK, defines landscape as an area perceived by people whose character is the result of the action and interaction of natural and/or human factors. So we're talking therefore about the interrelationship between topography and geology, soil type, ecosystems, habitat, species, vegetation, both semi-natural and cultivated, farming, land use, settlement patterns, building materials, communities, language, culture, folklore, dialects, past history, archaeology, and future planning, and how all this comes together to create a sense of place with a particular character. So for me, that is landscape. And in the discussions leading to the drafting of the 1949 National Parks and Access to the Countryside Act, the act that underpins what we in the national parks do, any attempts to define natural beauty too closely were intentionally avoided to ensure that the complexity of this interconnectedness that I've just spoken about was not unhelpfully limited by narrow legal definitions. Interestingly, there was no great focus given to an overriding importance of nature in relation to natural beauty, because nature conservation was dealt separately in the Act. The two sections of the Act were designed to complement each other, but natural beauty was considered to include nature, but be so much more than just nature. So this is something to bear in mind when the environmental NGOs are critical of the role landscape designations play with regard to nature recovery. That being said, as Chris has said earlier, the National Association and AONB family have wholeheartedly recognised the nature crisis and have shown significant leadership in this area, particularly in relation to strengthening our role in nature recovery. And Chris mentioned the Colchester Declaration. One might question whether there isn't a reciprocal adjustment required on the part of those that focus on the importance of nature reserves over that of the wider countryside, an area where we've seen the greatest rate of nature depletion. So just how are solutions to nature loss and climate change connected? The biggest wins for climate are based around changing the way we work across three distinct areas: transport, energy, and food. That's really where we've got to focus our energy. The most directly relevant one of these to landscape managers is food production and its associated land management. Agriculture globally is responsible for 1/4 of greenhouse gas emissions, 70% of freshwater use, and 80% of habitat loss. So farming's responsible for 80% of habitat loss at a global level, so it's got to be our area of focus. Farming in a way that helps regenerate ecosystems will not only improve the health of our soils and watercourses, habitats and species, but help lock in carbon and provide a mechanism to buffer flash floods and periods of drought. Additionally, by improving the quality of food and its availability, we improve the health of the nation. This isn't a quick fix, as there are many, many good examples of really good farming in the UK, and some of them are on your doorstep. But UK food producers have to compete on a global stage, and COVID has exposed just how extensive our supply chains are and how vulnerable our food systems are to disruption at every point in the journey from farm to fork. However, this pandemic has forced us all online, so physical geographical boundaries are not quite as important as they once were. There is a global movement supporting regenerative agriculture and an increasing ease by which we can all share ideas and learn from each other across the planet. It's absolutely essential that we plug into this opportunity and help us to use this to drive positive change. Food production is clearly interdependent on transport and energy systems itself, but landscape managers can also have a really positive impact more widely in these sectors too. Protected landscapes are directly involved in the planning system and also have a clear leadership role in the areas of green energy and sustainable, accessible transport. Arguably, the next round of management plans must not only articulate local and national vision around food production, transport and energy, but define how progress will be made at the community level and how it will contribute to national and global targets. Chris mentioned this also, but the recent opportunity afforded to AONBs and national park managers through the Farming in Protected Landscape programme is just one mechanism by which AONB teams can work collaboratively with others to address root causes, in this case with enlightened farmers and landowners. Addressing root causes rather than fiddling with symptoms is a central pillar of landscape management, an integrated approach that recognises the fundamental interrelationship between the economy, environment, and society. So why is collaboration so important? The problems of climate change and nature recovery are really complex. This means that there's often no clear linear relation between the actions we take and the results of those actions, their impact. Indeed, because of the natural uncertainties and margins of error in monitoring, it's unlikely that we'll ever be able to accurately report on which actions we take now are those that are having a positive effect. Additionally, the evidence indicates that we can't continue to approach the challenges in the way that we have been. This clearly doesn't work. We're doing lots of good things and we need to do more of them, but we actually need to do different things as well. And it's very, very clear that the scale and pace of change required is far beyond the scientific evidence and advice that was given even 10 years ago. We've got to move quickly and we have to act instinctively and we have to move differently. To generate the transformative change required, we need innovation. And to generate innovation, we need to harness diversity of thinking and bring it together in a way that generates new ideas and new shared goals. And we can only do this if we stop talking to just ourselves and understand the beliefs and values that we bring to the table, the beliefs and values that might actually get in the way of finding answers. And that was the point I was making in relation to the language used earlier. When we hear something, we bring a lens to the table through which we interpret what we're hearing. Clearly, there's a moral and ethical driver behind improving the diversity of our decision-making, our staff and our governance bodies, and Chris touched on the importance of diversity. But there's also a really, really simple utilitarian reason. Without increased diversity or input, we'll carry on getting the same answers, and these answers clearly aren't enough to solve the problem. Never before has diversity mattered so much. Innovation actually happens where thinking overlaps, where an engineer meets a doctor or a farmer meets an IT specialist. It doesn't happen when the same group speaks to itself over and over again about how to resolve a problem. So we need a new diversity of thinking at all levels of governance, from Westminster through local and parish councils to AONB partnerships. We need to get the scale of approach right too. Small groups can react quicker than large groups, so we need to reform ourselves quickly and effectively. We traditionally approach problems in a linear way from cause to effect. In complex systems, this won't get us the insight. Things don't happen in such a simple way. We need to understand this and get comfortable with it and take on board some of the learning that we've had presented to us, particularly over the last 18 months. So what does an integrated collaborative approach to managing landscape actually look like? How will we know if we actually get it right? Because that's the question. And I think it starts with understanding relationships. And I use this example, for example, the relationship between pollinators and crops, between crops and the economy, between the economy and nature, between nature and climate change. If we get it right, people will stop referring to an environmental sector, or indeed any sector, as we'll only successfully tackle the challenges ahead by thinking in terms of complex, interdependent systems that include the environment, the economy, and society. We also better understand human relationships. That's, to me, what good looks like. We'll understand motivations and drivers and give voice and agency to those currently excluded from helping find solutions. We'll see far greater diversity in decision making, and I've already made that point. AONB management plans will be co-developed with a wide cross-section of society with vastly different and often conflicting ideas, hopes and aspirations. The protected landscape manager and staff will skillfully help people find resolution to contested ideas. And I think that's got to be where the future lies. There'll be far fewer distracting turf wars where environmental NGOs fight for publicity through endless criticism of each other, and far more shared projects where brand is completely and totally irrelevant. Collaboration will be universal and interdependence will be celebrated. And rather than fear and paralysis surrounding the climate and environmental crisis, and they really are crises, there will be a universal sense of hope driven by really powerful leadership that supports, enables, empowers, and celebrates success. And I wanted to use this quote. We don't hear much from Barack Obama any longer, but he said something that I think is fundamental, and I've narrowed it down a bit. But hope is not blind optimism. It is that thing inside us that insists, despite all evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it and to work for it and to fight for it. And we are seeing real courage across the AONB family. The Colchester Declaration is a universal commitment we've collectively made, Chris has mentioned that, to tackling climate change, nature recovery. And the energy surrounding it is absolutely contagious. Likewise, the work that AONB teams are currently doing to take forward a programme of work around climate change is inspiring. But the scale and pace of delivery needs to increase as we learn more about the scale of the problems we're facing. And that's an argument that we're putting to government almost on a daily basis. So I'm sort of coming to the end, and it seems sensible to show a sunset towards the end of the discussion. And whilst the COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating for many and disruptive and frightening for many more, let's not get back to normal. I don't think we can actually afford to go back to business as usual, because business as usual has taken us to the place that we're currently in. Let's help reinvent a new normal based on compassion, empathy, collective endeavour, and all the other values that have really enduring meaning. And only by doing this will we have the insight, resilience, and motivation to tackle the existential crises of climate change and the loss of nature, something that I think we're very, very capable of doing. Thank you, Chris, and thanks everyone for taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Howard. There's a challenge and an opportunity, and quite a vision, really, for how the future lies ahead of us. The time when you're leaving us as well. We're very lucky to squeeze you in before you finish. A couple of days now, I think it is. Is that right?
2 days. Thursday I finish. Yeah. Thursday.
Well, if I forget to say at the end, bon voyage, and thank you for all you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, we've got a few questions that have come through, and I'm going to ask Simon, Pete, Howard to join us and try and address some of those questions. If you've got any as we're going along, please do type them in if they come to you as we're talking. And if you can't type, and you want to ask a question, wave your hands, and hopefully Kelly will be able to see the screen and warn me or give me some heads up. So I've lifted some of the questions and points that came out from the conversation, and I'm just going to go through those in order, if I can. So the first one was from Jill Butler, and I think John and Ian Egerton have answered this question in the chat, but Jill asked the question about whether or not the ancient woodland inventory work is capturing wood pasture, and that has been responded to by Ian Egerton from Devon Biodiversity Records Centre, who also corrected my presentation that it was the Devon Wildlife Trust that's doing that work, and it's not. It's quite rightly the Devon Biodiversity Records Centre, and Ian has corrected that to say that that they are capturing wood pasture as part of the pilot approach to this. So that's good to hear, because that's an important part of that landscape. Howard, you commented on Ed Dolphin's comment about rewilding, and I'll read it out just in case people haven't been able to see the chat, but Ed said, I've got concerns about the word rewilding, and there won't be news to Simon. Alistair has reminded us that ours is a managed landscape, and as Simon hinted, most projects that are labelled rewilding are not. They're actually restoring historic managed schemes. The word rewilding can ring alarm bells among some sectors of the wider public and is acquiring a pejorative tone. Can we stop using the word unless it's really for a project to establish a really wild environment and settle on a more accurate and perhaps less controversial label? Simon?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some issues, haven't we? And isn't it fascinating? I think that I absolutely agree with you, and I think we do have to be really careful of the language and the audience who is listening at a particular time. I think I put this question actually to Rewilding Britain when we ran a field course for University of Exeter students, and I was able to put it directly to Rewilding Britain, because they've obviously set up, Rewilding Britain and gone ahead and done that. So it's kind of the horse has bolted. We've now got this language of rewilding. My discussions with the students were around actually what are the examples of rewilding? How are we going to define that, and what are we actually doing? And quite rightly, they challenged us on what we were doing at Sharpened, and I absolutely agree with them. We're not rewilding, but not in the term in which I think it should be defined. Yeah, because for me, really rewilding is about huge landscape scale stuff going on, the presence of top predators, all that kind of stuff. That's pure rewilding. It's the Yellowstone National Park. It's right up there as the kind of gold standard. We can't do that in the UK for a whole bunch of very obvious reasons, or at least can't do it at the moment. But what's happened in our community, so our community being the students that are coming through university, is that this term rewilding is the term that they use. It's their language. So for us, because we're involved in nature conservation training, because they're our audience, we're kind of guided to use that language. But I think every time we use it, we have to caveat it. And there are so many other terms coming up, aren't there? And Howard listed them in some of the stuff, and I think it's a real challenge. But I think the difficulty is that the horse is bolted, partly because of Rewilding Britain. And I did ask whether Rewilding Britain saw a future where they might actually rebrand, and they wouldn't rule it in and they wouldn't rule it out. I think we are in a bit of a dynamic, but the problem is, as everybody's aware, the more the different language that we have creates then a dilution of the message, and that for me is a concern. So the more we use different languages and we have to different terms, and the more we have to qualify them, the more there's a danger that the language is diluted. But the key thing is we've got to get on with this stuff, whatever we call it. We've got, we've got this crisis, as Howard said, existential crisis. So in a sense, you know, I think we're all spending a lot of time thinking about this, and we actually need to get on with doing stuff on the ground. So there's that frustration as well. But I agree, it's there, and it's, oh my word, what should we do now? Open to offers.
Yeah, can I come in on that, Chris, just briefly?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think with the maximum respect, when we talk about Yellowstone being a gold standard, actually Yellowstone is a cultural landscape within which the American people removed the indigenous population.
Well, yeah.
So we now have a Category 1 protected area that is designated for its wildlife, but actually it was full of nomadic people that are now stopped.
That's true.
So there's a whole and I know you don't mean that, but
but you're right.
There's a whole link there. So
absolutely.
There's Chris will be aware of this, but we've done some work with the University of Derby and Miles Richardson around nature connectedness and the importance of connecting people to nature. And some of the findings that they've made have been really quite profound. 70% of people that make an emotional connection to nature go on to exhibit pro-environmental behavior. Only 7% of people that learn about nature go on to exhibit pro-environmental behavior. So for me, it's about how do we engage people in the subject. And some people may engage through the term rewilding, some may not, in which case it's perfectly reasonable. I think the important thing is how do we engage people on an emotional level? And I think it isn't just about doing stuff to the land, it's about rewilding ourselves as people, about understanding the relationship that we have to the natural environment and really embedding that. And that's going to be the challenge ahead. So I would worry less about the wording. I think we just need to be able to demonstrate what we mean, and we've got to be really clear that on a relatively crowded island, it means it isn't just about nature, it's getting that relationship between people and nature back into balance. And I think that's for me the way forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Got a question here for Pete from Jill Butler, asking how many farms do we have in the AONB area, and if facilitation groups are seen as having a major role, do we know why certain farms haven't joined these facilitation groups?
How many farms are in the AONB? Very good question. I'd love to know that. Hopefully we'll discover shortly, because after lots and lots of years of asking, DEFRA are on the brink of sharing us a database of people who receive basic payment schemes, which you could use effectively as a definition as a farmer. So I would estimate a couple of 100 in the AONB, but hopefully we'll find that out shortly. Facilitation groups, yes, we've been very successful in accessing a sector of the farming community within the AONB. I think mainly because the original funding required us to identify a priority area, and that's the area between the watershed of the Sid across to include the Axe. So where we've been actively engaging there for 5 years, we've got a good membership and a good connection. The rest of the AONB wasn't considered by DEFRA to be a priority area for facilitation activity, so we haven't been as active in that section. But what we do have in that area is some big landowners who have lots of tenant farmers, so we access the farming community via those. And I hope FIPL funding will allow us to get direct contact with a lot more of our farmers.
Thank you, Pete. Got a question here, possibly for Howard. Are you still there, Howard? Because I can't see you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. That's all right. No worries.
Let me start my camera again. I am here and I can hear. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. So Ian's question is: if AONBs and protected landscapes have been the focus for DEFRA's current FIPL programme, is that at a cost to the wider hinterland, where there are opportunities for restoration or creation of habitats outside these areas? How do we resolve that conflict in funding?
Yeah, so I'll pick up Tim's question and that question as well, because I think in some ways they're connected. Tim's point was around the political system and getting people on board.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, it is a challenge, a huge challenge. But what I will say is that the DEFRA Protected Landscapes team has grown over the course of the last 3 years from 1 or 2 people working flat out to a group of over 20 working flat out to support AONBs and national parks. And they are genuinely committed to supporting AONBs and national parks, without a doubt. They're committed to transforming national parks. They're very committed to supporting AONBs. So there's a slight different approach, but they're very good. And that's not to say that the transformations won't reach out to AONBs as well. So it's looking at the purpose, the powers, and the resources. So there is great commitment there. What I would also say is that we just have to lead by example. We can't be put off by the sheer the magnitude of the task ahead. When we set out to launch the Colchester Declaration, you know, as a national association, we had no idea whether we would get all AONBs on board. What we didn't also realise is just how much traction it would gain in government, to then find out after the event that we were the only organisation that had come up with an offer to deliver the 25-year environment plan. Everybody else had accepted what was written, but nobody had come up with anything. So I would just say, let's do it. And if we don't worry too much about the magnitude, let's do it, because we've got people within government that are truly supportive of what we're doing. So then to come on to the farming and protected landscape question, and Chris may well have something to say on this, but it's quite a loosely formed scheme in that it can operate beyond the boundary if there is an impact within the boundary. And if we're talking about ecosystem restoration, whatever we're talking about, then I think you've got a very good reason to look at improvements to farms that either are adjacent, abut, or have some kind of ecological connectivity with the area. So that does, I wouldn't limit it to the lines on the map that exist. Chris, I can see Chris nodding, which is helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd say is that it's vitally important that all the lessons we learn over the course of the next few years flow into the wider ELM, Environmental Land Management Scheme, support for farmers and landowners across the country. Because what we're essentially doing is testing the ground for committing to supporting farmers and landowners to deliver more for nature. And that will then be incorporated into the wider scheme. So I'm really pleased that AONBs and national parks are at the vanguard of this. It is something that we worked really hard to get. Just as an aside, in order to do this, we had to start by getting an amendment in the agriculture bill in order to make it possible for ministers to commit money to landscape. But once we got that in, it then allowed us to develop an agricultural proposal that then led through to the Farming and Protected Landscape Programme. And that started quite a way back. So, you know, start small and go for it. That's all I will say. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. And that's good history to explain how you get somewhere. You have to start, but also you have to be influential, and you have to be in at a level that allows you to make influenced decision making. And certainly the National Association has played a key role in achieving those things through you, Howard. So a couple of questions for Simon, two brief ones here. One is, do you or have a citizen science monitoring on the river and its water quality? And a second one is regarding how you can be a member of the DRN, whether you actually have to have a rewilding project underway, or, you know, is it something you just join? You don't have to have something in place.
Okay, great. So citizen science on the river, coming, something that's very much on our radar. and just a question of time and resource to do that. So certainly that's on our radar. I hope to start monitoring water quality pretty soon. Membership of the DRN open to anybody who has an interest in this crazy thing called rewilding, or anything else you'd like to call it. We're just actually about to just put a little paragraph in the network, perhaps addressing some of this issue about the words that are used to describe. But if you're interested in anything to do with nature recovery, and again, just picking up on a really clear point that Howard was talking about nature is future. And this idea of looking back, I think the really important point that actually, yes, it's about creating a new future, not about trying to, we use that word restore, don't we, which means looking back and tell you something from the past. But actually, we've got some experience of what the past was, or we've got a sense of what the past was, but we are actually creating a new future. And in the early stages, we wanted to call the Sharpened project just that, Rewilding Future. And I think that's really useful to hear, actually, because I think that is positive. It's about creating something new. Not quite sure what that's going to look like, actually, because it's new. There's new science coming out. There's new studies. But yeah, so that's another important point. I slightly digress, but all welcome into the Rewilding network. If you find it useful, as a place to share information and gain information and come to events, etc., that's the place for you. It's free to join. Just use your favorite search engine, and I'm sure you'll land on the entry point.
Thank you, Simon. Great. There's a broad question, and I'd scribbled something down around this, which is that we talked about government targets for tree cover, and there's the question about the balance in landscape, trees, farming, food production, rewilded landscapes, or recovered landscapes, or whatever we want to call them. There's a balance there, isn't there? And there's a lot of discussion around food production, our ability to be able to feed the nation, so to speak, our weakness or our resilience to imports and exports. And we've seen some of the issues around transportation and what that means for our supply. But, do we need a balance? The balance here, what is the appropriate level of wildlife and habitat, ecological restoration, landscapes in our country? How do we balance all that and still keep a viable farmed economy? Question.
Shall I start? Simon, do you want to start?
No, after you.
No, I was going to make a plea for keeping a sort of helicopter view on this. If you look at beef farmed on west of England grasslands, for instance, we're blessed with loads of rain and a relatively temperate climate. So we actually managed to lock up a lot of carbon in the grasslands that we grow on the west of Britain. So that's the West Country, Wales, and up into Cumbria. As a consequence of this, if we get beef suckler herds or beef cattle grazed on our grasslands, the beef that we produce, or should I say some of the beef that we import from Brazil, has a carbon footprint of 14 times that of the carbon footprint of our beef produced in the west of Britain. So we've really got to understand the detail of our farming systems, and we've got to look at them on a global scale. So it might actually be more carbon effective to farm high quality beef and export it than it is to bring in beef from further afield. So it's more complex than that. So that's my first plea. And the second plea, because it picks up on the point around reduction in food outputs, is that we need to be looking at the sustainable intensification of some farming. It might be quite possible to look at hydroponics and growing food where we'd never thought of growing food. We've really got to look at the way we use our domestic gardens. I mean, it really is that simple. And the way we really turn some of our least productive land into more productive land. And some of that can be done in a really urban environment. So it isn't about non-intensification, it's about being a bit smart about it. So Simon, over to you.
Well, no, absolutely. And I would add into that the marginal land. We're operating in marginal land down at Sharpened, and the effort, and I've spoken to some landowners, some neighbours, where the effort that they put in and the financial return they get, huge amount of effort, virtually zero financial return. I mean, it really is virtually zero, literally. And they're doing it because they've always done it, and because they feel, and I absolutely understand this, they feel that there's a legacy to a family history there. But there are large sections of marginal land which actually we can bring forward into a new wildlife-rich future, if I might put it that way, that will help with the ecological crisis and therefore the climate crisis. So I think, but I absolutely agree with you, it is complex. We do need to take that helicopter view, and we do need to gather a lot more data around that to inform decisions going forward. I hope that rewilders, if you want to call it the ecological restoration folk, are not saying that all intensive farming has to disappear. You know, that we've got to find a balance. It goes back to what you were saying, Howard, about a balance, trying to find the balance. So actually, and I think there's a quick gain, a quick achievable gain by looking at marginal ground, in particular, marginal agricultural land.
Thank you. I think that's a really good note to end on, because we could go way along this conversation.
Yeah.
Talking about percentage, and it's interesting some of the conversation points that are coming up there. So 20%, 30%.
Oh yeah, yeah.
John Burgess's comment about woodland and the importance of that. I think it's been a fantastic set of presentations. I'd like to thank Simon and Howard for joining us for our annual meeting. You've absolutely made it. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. I'm going away inspired, as I always do when I listen to important and knowledgeable speakers. And I'm also thinking there's a challenge ahead for us protected landscapes, who we are and what we do. And I've written a little note to myself about we've got to find some way of entangling people into the tapestry of our landscapes. We need voices that are diverse and have a range of views. And it's not just a resource issue, it's a cultural issue. So we need landscape managers that perhaps have different qualifications and different backgrounds, not necessarily your traditional ecologist or like myself, someone that's done countryside management. Maybe I need to become a negotiator or a collaborator, but we need change. But the key thing is we need collaboration. So without any further ado, I'm going to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. The information that I referred to earlier will be available on our website. You will get a link in a follow-up email to this from Kelly that will provide you the information where you need to go to get that. If you've got any further questions or queries, please do contact us. We'll provide a summary of the chat. We'll try and answer some of the questions if we haven't done so here. But a huge thank you from me, the team, the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been great.